Hello, podcast listeners. This is Ed Franklin with the edfranklin.nolimits podcast. You can reach me at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com if you'd like to be a guest or somebody would be a good guest on my podcast. You guys probably thought I stopped doing these because I haven't done a bunch over the last 5 weeks, and I'll let you know why that is. But my last podcast with my oldest daughter got a lot of views. And the one with Paige Altman, which is one of my younger daughters, got a lot of views too. So they were both great podcasts, and I'm ready to go again. And I just have to switch these up a little bit and do them more at night instead of during the day like I used to do them. And I should have about the same frequency. I'm going to try to get one a week out, possibly more if I have a good guest. So, man, a lot's been going on since the end of February. If you guys follow me on any kind of social media, you know that I started a new job. I started a job with ICS, which is Industrial Commercial Systems. And when I was in the HVAC business selling fans and air distribution and all those items, dampers, louvers, and all that, this was one of my customers. Probably around 2000, 2001 is when I started selling to them. And the owner of the company, we became friends over that time. And haven't stayed in touch necessarily, but I was always, from afar, kind of keeping an eye on his company. And the reason I bring him up is when he started this company, he had come from a company that I had been for before, Southland Industries. And Southland Industries was trying to build a culture of value and kind of get out of that bidding arena and, do design build and things like this. And the owner of our company had a very specific plan. I think he did, which is, obviously changed over the years. But he's done a fantastic job of building this culture with really smart people and the right people on the bus. Kind of a good to great theory. I don't know if he built it after good to great, but I've talked about this before on my podcast. I had some experience with good to great, Jim Collins' novel or book that he wrote. And Built to Last. He had a couple other books, but his philosophies were always built around getting the right people in the right places, selling value and not price, and just creating a culture that made the employees empowered and empowered the employees. And as much as I've talked about that in the past, and as much as companies talk about it, it's rare that you see a company that's actually implementing this and is creating success from that. But that's exactly what's happened here. I can say probably with 100% certainty, I would never have gone back to work for a contractor unless it was this one, simply because I know what the owners started out. And I'm not going to mention names. You can go on the website if you want to look up names. I just don't have his permission, or, he's not here to defend himself if I say something wrong or anything. So, but he always treated me with a very high, I always felt very respected by him. And I just was always impressed with how smart he was and kind of really keeping track of this vision that he had. And now being an employee, he's done it. I mean, he's created this culture, and I know it was not easy for him. I know he's been through employees. I think maybe the hardest part about a company doing this or changing their culture to something like this is convincing the employees that they're empowered to do these things, that they're trusted, that they were hired for a reason, and that they have, the ability to create this culture for the people that they answer to or are answering to them. In addition to that, they hired a gentleman who was just recently promoted to president, who is exactly in alignment with these things, and even maybe on a different level. He's read the books I've read. He's studied these these formulas, I guess, if you want to call them, about empowering those employees and getting the most out of the employees, having everybody in the company kind of get involved with this culture change or this culture period, and really, have these really high expectations of each other, because they hired us based on, that we could reach those expectations. I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but what's new? I do have a specific exercise we're going to do after I get done with this initial things. So it's funny because the president of the company will periodically put out, a message to us on Microsoft Teams, which is not every time inspirational. It's kind of just thought provoking and things that we read, and then he'll do a video here and there and speak about some things. And I think one of the attributes I like about him right now is that he's vulnerable. He knows he's not perfect. He knows that he has some things to fix in his wheelhouse, and he knows, that he's going to need some further education. And we all need further education, and they do that. They're educating their managers. They have them going to peer groups. They have them, attending classes. They have them just getting smarter. And once you get into that mode of being a better employee or being part of this culture, you're kind of hungry for that knowledge, right? And once you see it start working, that's the beauty of it, because you start to think that way. And once it's not brainwashing, but it's almost you get these aha moments like, wow, I never really thought of doing business like that. So it's really awesome. I'm going to fit in well at this company. I'm going to be successful here, come hell or high water. It's not an easy job. I'm tasked with with much of what the other salesmen do, but I'm also tasked with another kind of project, I guess you will, and I won't get into it, but it's kind of specific to the types of customers and the people I want to get. And, they're not always easy to reach. With the way the media is now and social media, it's not easy. It used to be 20 years ago, I could literally call somebody, they'd pick up their phone. Now it's a little bit tougher to get through, but, with gatekeepers and property lockdowns, and after COVID with people, sometimes not even wanting to see you. But I'm really happy to say that I was actually able to go to two mixers now in the last 2 weeks. And man, I love getting back in front of people, and I have my plate's full with that type of stuff coming up too. But something he brought up a couple of weeks ago in one of his videos, he brought up focus and how hard it is to focus on things, especially in our society with social media. And you think about kids, how much time they're spending on their phones and on, gaming things, and how much time people spend on TV and, binge watching TV and things like that. And I fortunately never really have had that issue. I don't watch much TV. I probably spend a little too much time on social media, but I'm also trying to promote my podcast and, engage customers as well. But he talked about this focus thing, and coincidentally, right after he talked about that, my grandson had a project that he had to do for school, and he, like most teenagers, procrastinated on this project and left himself 5 days to get it done instead of 31 days like he should have had. And I sat down with him the other night, because we really had to kind of get him organized and how he was going to get this project done, how much time it was going to take each night. And he was getting, visibly frustrated, right? Almost to the point of anger, like crying angrily. And, as a jerk, I guess I had to say, well, if you didn't procrastinate, this would happen. But that didn't fix the issue. So I'm happy to say that he did get the project done. We helped him just a little bit with some logistical things, but I know I took him to school today with that finished project, and it was a big board. And what a difference in his attitude. I mean, the pressure was off of him. The project was behind him, and he did a really good job on the project. And I just can't imagine how well it would have been done if he would have spent 31 days on it instead of 5. But, he got the project done, and he learned a pretty valuable lesson about procrastination and how to focus. And, we all have that problem focusing on things. And I think that for me personally, I'm probably the most focused when I'm at the gym, right? I'm not talking to anybody. They don't have the ability to talk to me because I have headphones on. They can try to talk. I can't hear them. I'm able to, it's very repetitive, right? Doing curls, you do 4 sets of 8, whatever your routine is. And I feel like I'm very focused there. I'm not thinking of a lot of different things. Probably the only thing that makes me unfocused is the lack of etiquette in gym, but I get over that pretty quick. But it was just interesting that the president of this company brought up that he struggles sometimes with focus, and I know we all do. And I told you this story before, and I'm going to tell it again. When I was going to my trainer, we were probably halfway through the total time we spent together, and he had come in and he was kind of visibly upset. We got moving on that, and he started talking about he is living with his girlfriend, with their family, and he was very upset at the dad and the brother, and there was just all these things going on. And I was kind of angry at him doing that, because I was there to work out, right? I'm paying him for his time to take me through my routine and teach me whatever I'm doing wrong, or help me out and kind of push me through, get over this perceived limitation I had in my head about my weight and strength and things like that. And I kind of stopped him at one point, probably 15 minutes into his complaining, and said, look, I'm not paying you to listen to you complain. And I had compassion for him, but it was true. He had to really learn how. And after we were done that day, I kind of sat him down, because he's a young kid. He's like my kid's age. He's almost like a surrogate son to me at some level. And I had to say to him, look, you really need to compartmentalize these issues, right? If you have a problem with your girlfriend or your dad, you can't bring it up when you're with me, because you're paying, or another client, right? You're here to speak with, to help me, and that problem needs to be compartmentalized somewhere else. I've gotten way better at that, where I can take, if I'm focusing on something like tracking down customers, if I'm on LinkedIn or wherever I'm at, making phone calls, I can put those things to the side. You understand that you can't fix that problem that minute anyway, so you might as well get done what you have to get done, and then put that other issue to the side and kind of worry about it later. So I guess the point to all that was, we can talk about focus on another podcast, but it was the fact that the president of this company, and it's a good sized company and getting bigger, we're going to make sure of that, is vulnerable, and he's willing to put that out there and admit he's not sitting up in this ivory tower in a suit and tie going, you're doing this wrong and you're doing that wrong. He's encouraging us and trying to get us to think in a different way, right? To think. And this is things that I've read books about, studied, and listened to speakers, and the Simon Sinek's of the world, and all these guys, and I get it. So when he's talking to us, I'm understanding everything he's saying, and some of the other guys aren't necessarily on board with it because of their past, right? The way they've been trained, or the way they've learned or grown up, or whatever. But I'm very confident he's going to be able to convince these guys, and hopefully I can help with that this is really the better way to go, right? Sell this value, build these relationships. These relationships will last a lot longer than a price will, because if they're going out to bid every 6 months or every year, you're bound to either take it at low bid and lose money on the job, or lose the job because you're not willing to bid it. And it's a whole different level of commitment from the employees when they're doing the work. It's not just a checklist of things the minimums they have to do, right? I remember when I worked at Pepsi, there was we wanted to give my boss wanted to give the technicians a raise, but he wasn't allowed to give them a raise because they were union guys, and they had specific amounts of money they could make. But it wasn't fair to some of the guys that were overachievers and did not want to go into management, right? There was guys that were really good technicians, and they were on time, and they were excelling at what they did. And I remember this guy telling me, the union negotiates minimums, right? And when you're going into a bid situation, that's what you're doing. You're negotiating a minimum of what the minimum amount of work you can do, or let's rephrase that, the maximum amount of work you can do for the most minimal money, right? So if you're going into that bid, you're saying, well, I'm going to do this as fast as I can to get this price, right? Versus going in and saying, what are your concerns? What do we need to do to increase the longevity of this equipment, to really troubleshoot, to make sure there's no issues with this equipment? moving forward. So you don't have problems with this very expensive equipment that you need to take care of on a regular basis. And then you come up with the price. A fair price to get the right job done, not just throwing dollars at it and hoping that you make it, work as far as, hopefully you make it work as far as dollars go and the cost of doing business. It's one of the things, and I've said this before about salespeople. There's a lot of salespeople, and I don't think that's the case with our sales guys. They don't understand the cost of doing business. If you sell a job and there's a lot of problems on that job, every time there's a problem, someone else has to get involved and you're spending dollars on that problem to get it fixed or rectified for this customer, it's costing you money out of your profit. There's no question about it. There's no doubt about it. But we don't necessarily have a place on the spreadsheet for that, right? There was a problem and it cost us this much. So by the time the job's over, if you're paying your salesman on gross sales, they've already been paid, and you just got to eat those problems. And it shouldn't be like that. First of all, we should fix those problems before they even come up. We should be anticipating those things. And if they do come up, we need to rectify them. So the last thing I'm going to talk about before I get into what this podcast is really about is beginning April 25th, next month, I'll be teaching a class at Poway Unified School District Adult School. And it's the basics of sales and networking, really basic things, right? It's a 2-hour class for 4 weeks, and it's very reasonable. If you're a young salesperson or know somebody who's young that wants to learn a little bit about sales, I've been in this business for about 35 years in selling. Or if you're a little bit more seasoned, but you just want a refresher course, or you know a company that has some salespeople that this is very inexpensive training for them. And I can guarantee you if they can just apply a few of the things that I'm going to teach about, they will increase their closing ratio and they'll feel more comfortable out there as a salesperson. I do have a syllabus, if you will, for the class, but it's really going to depend on what kind of people I get into class. I really want to fulfill what they need, not just what I come up with, and this is all you get to learn. So, of course, the first class will be a lot about the people that are in the class, finding out what they need, just like a salesperson would if you were going to a customer, and then addressing those issues, because I want them to have some value to this when it's all said and done. I said it's very inexpensive. It's in the catalog on page 10 for the new season come out. You can go to their website. It's Poway Unified School District Adult Education. And if you know anybody or you want to be involved or anything, sign up on there, and I will see you on April 25th. It's 6 to 8 at night for 4 Mondays. Now, let's get into the beef of this. And I think that at some point we may have some people from ICS on here to kind of talk about our business, kind of, tell you what our vision is. So you and other people that we have as customers can understand it, because we're really looking to partner with companies, not just be a vendor. We don't want to just be a vendor. We want to be that person's partner culturally, safety-wise, and business-wise. We want to do what they need and what's best for their application and make sure that they get their things taken care of. Now, I have talked a lot about, business coaching, sales training, all these different things over the last year on my podcast. And it was me really navigating what my niche in life is going to be, right? What I feel like I think people need out there. And it's not me talking down to you. It's me talking up to you, saying, this is what I've learned over the years. This is what I feel like is the most beneficial to anybody, anywhere, without just jumping into a business coaching situation where, and I'll explain that more. So, I've read books. Like I said, I've listened to videos. I've listened to speakers. I've spoken to people about this. I've talked to leadership people. And I can tell you that as far as I'm concerned, it all comes down to one thing. So we're going to do an exercise. And if you're driving, you just listen. Don't close your eyes when I ask you to close your eyes, because I don't want you wrecking your car. As I've gone through my entire life, and when I look back and I think where things were going well, where things weren't going so well, was I being successful in business or in life, personal life, kids, all these things that get thrown at you. every one of you listening here has a responsibility to somebody in your life. If you have kids, you're responsible to your kids or your spouse or your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your mate, whatever you want to call them. If you have animals, you're responsible to them. All of us have this responsibility to somebody else or something else, that the reason we're going to work, or the reason we're volunteering in life, or whatever we're doing, whatever our actions are, it all comes back to us serving something, serving somebody else, serving our maker, whoever it is. And I thought, when it really comes down to everything, we have to kind of act selfishly. And I'm going to give you an opportunity that nobody ever gives you. I'm going to give you an opportunity to be selfish as I talk over the next 15, 20 minutes. You don't get a chance to do this very often, because you're either at work all day, and then you go home and you have your family, and then you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to mow the yard, and you got to do all these things. But forget about all that right now. I want you not to think about anything else but you. Just be as selfish as you think you can possibly be, okay? I think you need to get out of your head anybody that you're responsible for right now, and just make it you and your maker, right? Could be God, could be whoever you think that is. The reason I add that person in, that entity in, is because of your conscience, right? If I'm asking you to be selfish, you have some kind of conscious mind that is keeping you moral at some level or whatever. And that entity, that creator, has to be with you on this exercise, but nobody else, not your wife, not your husband, not kids or anything else. And I want you to picture something for me. I want you to picture a room. And for those of you who are not driving, I'd like you to close your eyes, because I think if you can do this exercise with me, I know it's goofy, and I've been to talks and seminars where they ask you to do things like this, and it sounds so stupid, but the thing is if I can't get you to concentrate throughout this exercise, it's going to be hard for you to get anything out of it. So I want you to close your eyes. I want you to enter this room, and I want you to picture a room full of doors, right? Every door in this room represents a year in your life, okay? So if you're 50 years old, there's going to be 51 doors. If you're 20 years old, there's going to be 21 doors. You kind of get the idea. One of the doors is a different color. That's the extra door. So on those doors, on the front of those doors, is written all the things that happened in that year, good and bad, right? Joyful, hurtful, tragedy, success, love, hate, everything in that year is on those doors, and you can go up to them and easily just kind of go through the list. You can look, if maybe it's a list of 2 columns, maybe it's a list of bad and good. However you want to perceive that, look at that door and kind of take a look at every year of your life, right? What's good happened, what's bad happened. And then I want you to look at that extra door. That extra door's got nothing written on it. It's kind of at the end of the thing, or it's in the middle, wherever you want to put that door. And I want you to imagine that when you walk through that door, all those other doors are behind you. And you're obviously seeing the point I'm making here. Because when you look at those doors, when you look at the doors that have this great success on them, right? You had this really good year in sales and all this, and you can kind of think back to that year and say, well, the economy was good, and I was with a good company, and I had good leadership, and we had a good product, and it was just that time of year when everything was selling. Because conversely, there's going to be times on those, there's going to be lists on that door where things weren't so good, right? And maybe it was you, maybe you were in a bad place, maybe you were in a bad relationship, maybe you weren't as good a shape as you wanted to be in, maybe you had set some goals and just fucking blew it, right? Maybe you decided to, eat right, and then, there was 4 weddings in a row on the weekends, and, you ate half the cake or whatever. And, You looked at everything else you did before that as a failure because you just blew it, right? You were eating clean, and then all of a sudden something happened. And you have tragedies on those doors. I mean, some horrific tragedies. We had a couple horrific tragedies in our life over the last couple of years. Some of you know about them, some of you don't. I'm not talking about them. But I want you to see where those patterns are, right? What was going on when you weren't doing so good, and what was going on when you were kicking ass, right? What were the best years of those lives? What were the best doors that you're reading? When were the best ones? And then I want you to start thinking, man, start setting those goals, right? So here's the point to this exercise. I will guarantee you 100% that when you came to a door that had a lot of tragedy or had a lot of downs, like bad relationships and things like that, you were not in a place in life where you wanted to be. Whether it was your fault or not, you were not in a place in life where you wanted to be. You weren't performing at your highest level. You probably weren't in the best shape. You probably were in a job that you hated. You were probably blah, blah, blah. I could just keep going on and on, right? I've mentioned this metaphor before, and I think it's so important. And I just want to beat this into your head. When you're on an airplane and they're talking about the oxygen mask falling out of the ceiling, they always say to make sure you put your oxygen mask on first before you put your oxygen mask on your child. And you understand why I'm using that metaphor. If you are struggling, and let's say your child doesn't want let's say you go to put your child's oxygen mask on first, and they're struggling, right? And they're like, I don't want to put the mask on, but maybe it was before COVID, and they never wore a mask before. And it's kind of scary, right? People are screaming, things are going, all these things are dropping out of the ceiling and everything. And you exhaust yourself to a point where you lose consciousness. Your child is there alone, right? You have no ability anymore to help that person. So if you're not doing the things today or tomorrow or the next day, if you're not doing the things that are making you the best version of yourself, you don't have the ability to take care of all these other people in your life at a high level. I was just walking out of the grocery store a bit ago, and I thought something, and I just blanked out what I thought. But I thought that, we're creatures of we'll do anything for other people and not always for ourselves. Like if our kids ask us something, we're going to give them the best answer we can give them with the knowledge we have at that time. I say it that way because when my kids asked me questions when I was 25, they're going to get a whole different answer at 60 years old. I have some experience now. I have some things that have happened. I've observed people going through things. I don't regret any decisions I made because I did the best I could with the information I had at that point. What really bothers me is when somebody my age, and maybe it's me, makes a stupid decision when I know better, right? When I have better knowledge, when I've already learned, when I've already observed these things happening to other people, or they've happened to me. So my point is pretty clear, I hope, that you cannot take care of people at the highest level. You cannot be that unselfish person at your best if you're not at your best personally, if you're not in the shape you want to be in. And listen, I don't care if you're 180 pounds or 480 pounds. If you're 480 pounds and you're very happy in your skin, and that's good, and that's up to you. That's not my business. But probably if you're 480 pounds, you're probably not super happy with the way you look or the clothes you wear, or whatever. I'm just using that as an example. We have perceived limitations, and we talk about no limits. We talk about limitations on this podcast often. We have perceived limitations, and if a girl comes up to me, let's say a woman, and says, I just don't feel good, I'm really overweight, and I'm looking at her going, you ain't overweight, but in their mind, that's their perception of how they feel, and they need to correct that within themselves. I'm not just talking about physical things here. I'm talking about mental. At this new job, I had a conversation with the president the other day about reading, about how you're nurturing, what kind of nutrition you're putting in your brain. Are you reading books? Are you, and once you read that book, are you applying yourself? We had a whole podcast on that about my friend that reads all these books, but he doesn't ever really apply anything. So he's really well read, but how much of that information is he applying himself with, or applying to his life? There's so much information out there on the internet that is decent information about educating yourself, reading books, listening to books. I mean, if you have Amazon, you can get free books on your phone, on your Kindle, on whatever you want to put it on an iPad. Free education. Why wouldn't you put aside an hour a week or 10 minutes a day, something, and get that free nutrition for your brain? If you go to bodybuilding.com or muscleandfitness.com, there's diet plans on there, not diet, but life-changing ways to eat. There's exercises, just all free, right? All stuff you could probably just go up to your local school and do. You don't have to join a gym. You don't have to be uncomfortable in the weight room. You don't have to become anything like that. You could do it on your own. And I'm encouraging you to kind of take a look at your life, and take a look at that door that there's nothing written on it yet, and decide what that writing is going to be on that door moving forward. There's some embarrassing stuff on those other doors. There's some stupid shit we did in our life that we wish didn't happen. But you know what? It happened and it's over. There's nothing you can do about it. There's some really good stuff on those doors too. It's about when we were, thinking about our spouse in a different way, if we're having issues with our spouse, or if we had different relationship with this person or that person, and those things were making us better versions of ourselves. So I guess, I'm telling you with 100,000% certainty that if you can get yourself in a place where you're feeling positive, where you're feeling encouraged, where you're feeling confident, where you're feeling like you're moving towards something bigger than what you have now. It's not financial, how much money you have. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with how you're feeling about yourself and your ability to help other people when you're at your best level, right? Look, I know that some people have health concerns. Some people have that exercise isn't going to help. But there's nothing you can do to change it today. You're going to have to get part of your life to where you want it to be. I know we can't pick our parents, or we can't pick our children sometimes, and they may have things that seem to be holding us back. But this is where that selfishness comes in. We have to do this once in a while. And I hate really using that word because I don't think I'm that way, selfish. But I think sometimes I do need to take some time out. I know my wife needs to take some time out. She worked very hard at her job. She works very hard with her grandkids. She works very hard on me. She spends a lot of time on me, doing things for me. And she needs some space to do her own thing. And I kind of probably would never have said that 20 years ago, but it's not something she's doing against me. And I think a lot of times guys and girls will think that if the guy's got to go out and do something on his own, he doesn't want to be with me. That's not what it is at all. It's about them getting right with themselves, right? And I know when you start thinking about this, it's going to resonate with you, and you're going to start going, oh yeah, I remember like in 1994 when this happened. We are very resilient people, animals, whatever you want to call us, humans. We tend to forget a lot of things that happen painfully and try to move forward on those. I hope we do. I think sometimes we do the opposite. And a great example is when my son was born. My wife was, I don't know if she had problems with that pregnancy, but I know it definitely wasn't a picnic, right? It wasn't. And of course, I'm trying to give input of, what I can do. And she's blaming me, right? Because I'm the one who did this to her. And I remember when he came out and he was healthy and all that good stuff. And she says, She looks right at me and says, well, that wasn't so bad. And I'm like, oh my God, were you not in the room for the last, 6 months? You don't remember how bad that was? Another one is a tattoo. People say to me, I got tattoos all over. Oh, did those hurt? And I'm like, oh yeah, they hurt. But it's the oddest thing, because I have like 15 tattoos. As soon as that tattoo's done, you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. Why I'm almost crying on the table for 3 hours. Then all of a sudden you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. And you go get another one. I mean, if people would react to how bad a tattoo hurts, everybody'd have one that has any of them. And most people wouldn't have any. But we have this ability to do this where we go through this pain and then we kind of put it behind us and we go, well, that wasn't so bad. I think when you have children and stuff happens, right, especially as adult children, and they do something that maybe you don't approve of. There's never a grudge. I never hold anything against that child, right? The next weekend we get together, everything's fine. Because I love them so much. We'll just put that behind us and move on to the next thing. I mean, every one of my kids did something dumb when they were younger, that irritated me, but I have a great relationship with every one of my kids. So obviously I put that behind us. So let's go back to this room for just a minute, and then we'll move forward and kind of get out of here. And I hope this resonates with you today. So like I said, when I thought about, listen, let's talk about business coaches for a second. If you're in business right now and you're saying, God, I want to grow my business, I want to be a better networker, and I want to be a better entrepreneur, and I want to do all these things better, but you've got something holding you up, weight, a relationship, anything that I can think of, and that you hire that person at a high price because they're not inexpensive, your ability to absorb what they're teaching you is much more difficult. You need to get right with yourself. You need to get those things straightened out so you can be the best learner, so you can absorb that information that's coming in. You can focus on what they're telling you. You're not thinking about something else while they're telling you, then you forget everything. For two reasons, you got to do that. One, you paid for it and you should get your money's worth. And two, you want to succeed, you need to learn some of these things, right? So, like I said, this is not me talking down to you saying you guys have all these problems and you need to fix your shit before you can get it. This is me going, man, I've shot myself in the foot 100 times in my life because I wasn't prepared to learn or prepared to change or prepared to think differently. And when I talked about the culture of this company, the hardest part of this company's journey is going to be teaching people that never read anything or understand this philosophy to accept this philosophy, right? They go right back to, I'm going to lose my job. They go right back to those negative things a lot of time. But by the same token, you're going to get these people, and there's a specific person I'm thinking about. I won't mention his name, that I have worked with closely since I've been here, that got the aha moment. He's like, oh man, yeah, I didn't even think of it that way. That's right, you didn't. But if you do, things are going to change. You're going to start looking at business different. You're going to start approaching that account differently. That sales call, you're going to approach much differently. See, I never used to like cold calling years ago when I was in businesses. I never liked cold calling. Most people don't. I'll cold call anybody now because I know when I get there, my specific reason for being there, the immediate reason is not to sell them something. It's to build a relationship. It's to say, oh, you have kids, or, oh, you fish, or, oh, you do, it's that kind of relationship. It's getting that guard down from that customer. I was talking to a person the other day, and I told him I was getting fingerprinted. I had to get fingerprinted for PUSD. And he goes, well, what are you teaching? It says I'm a lecturer. That's what the way they classify me. But I said, well, I'm teaching a class. He says, what are you teaching? I said, sales and networking, just kind of on a basic, kind of the ABCs of that. And she goes, oh, you know what? I hate salespeople. So it's a wonder why salespeople are apprehensive to go into a place, right? I hate salespeople. It's the first thing she says. And I'm thinking, wow, she's had some bad experiences with salespeople. That's what my class is going to hopefully teach people, not to, not to think that way. I have a friend of mine that teaches, he's been on here, Steve Haru. He used to have this, he has a website, I think, where he might have written a book, I'm not even sure, that says sales is not a bad word. It's not a bad word. Everybody in a company, in any company, is a salesperson. And they need to think that way. They need this. We need to be. We're a sales company in the contracting business, because what happens is you start talking about it differently, right? If you just tell somebody, look, you're going to go out and sell this, they're like, ah, shit, But if you go out, hey, can you just go meet this person and introduce yourself? Whole different ballgame, right? You don't mind doing that, right? So I know when I call somebody or talk to them on the phone, or I talk to them on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, I'm just trying to build a relationship, right? And if they've known me from before, I'm just trying to give them some information on what I'm doing now. And hey, can you introduce me to somebody, because I do need these connections? And they're much more willing to do it if they know I'm not going to hammer some guy with, an immediate sale, or I'm trying to learn what this customer needs before I can't sell him anything unless I know what he needs. Right? It seems like a lot of salespeople do two things wrong. They don't tell people what they do completely, and they assume that they know what the customer needs. And a lot of times it's not the case, right? You might sell somebody a car, but they really need an SUV because they have children or they camp or whatever. You got to find those things out. And that's that hunting trip. So I want you to open your eyes. I hope you've opened your eyes. If you haven't, you probably fell asleep listening to me talk. But I want you to think about that room sometimes when you're to that point where you're like, man, I gotta change some things in my life, or I gotta get in the right mindset. And you remember about what I talked about compartmentalizing those thoughts, taking that half an hour, taking that 10 minutes, and only thinking about that thing, writing things down. You remember, it's like you remember things like eight times more if you write something down. I'm a big list guy. I like to tell my kids, draw a line down and put pros and cons. What's good about it? What's bad about it? If your cons are 30 lines long and your pros are 2, you might want to rethink it. Vice versa, same thing. Are you going to fail? The fail is a funny word, and I brought this up before. I think most of the time when people think they fail, when they have this perception that they failed, they just didn't feel like the end was going to be what they thought it was going to be. If somebody told me, I'll tell you a great metaphor for that is running, right? I don't like to run. I don't mind it. I haven't done it enough in the last 2 years to really even say I can run still. And I'm not 150 pounds either. But we used to run sprints when I was working with my trainer, and I really want to get back to that because it's like high intensity training, the HIIT theory. And but if somebody came to me and let's say I said, look, I want to run a marathon, and they went, oh, well, that's huge. You want to run a marathon? What do I need to do to run a marathon? They'd say, well, how much do you run now? I don't run at all. Okay, well, let's start off. You got to run a half a mile a day for the next 5 days, right? Half a mile. How long does it take to run a half a mile? 5 minutes. For me, it would probably take 5 minutes. Or walk the mile, whatever you got to do. Walk it, run it, do whatever you got to do. And then every week after that, you got to increase by half a mile. So pretty soon you're down the road, you're running 13 miles a day for a week. To me, that's insanity, right? I just look at that and go, nope, that's not going to happen. So for me to say that I want to run a marathon, when I talk about the work that needs to be put in, I'm not running a marathon, right? It's too much work. The end result to me is not big enough for me to put all that work in. Now, did I fail? No, I didn't fail. I just decided not to do it. And I think a lot of times we confuse failure with what you're willing to do to get to that goal, right? I toyed with the idea of being in my own business, but after running a chamber and after being around small businesses, it's a lot of work. And sometimes there's a big reward, but a lot of times it's not as rewarding as you think. And when people say, well, I can work for myself, I don't have to listen to anybody. I don't know. I've had some pretty cool people I can listen to. I'm very happy right now listening to what the leadership of this company is doing because I buy into it. I get it. I've read the same things they've read. I understand what they're trying to do. Now, I've only been there 5 weeks, but I can see a pattern already of good things, right? Of positive things that are going to help me be a better version of myself, and I'm going to be successful because they want me to be successful. So many times we hire our salespeople. We go, you got to raise everything by 20%, and we'll see you in 6 months. And go. They don't help you at all. They don't give you anything. They don't change their culture. They don't change anything. You're going to fail in that situation, but that's not the salesman failing. That's their management. That's the company failing. I've been with companies that want to change their culture, but they don't want to change. Not going to work. Everybody in this company, from the person that's the newest and the lowest on the totem pole, or however you want to say it, to the highest person, they got to have the same ideas. They got to buy into the same culture, right? They have to have the same belief in what they're pitching, and they have to convince those people at every level to buy into that thing too, and why they're buying into it, not just because. Safety is a great thing. We have a very high regard for safety. We want our employees to go home safe to their families. We want our customers to be safe. We want to make sure no one's getting hurt. We want to take all the necessary steps. This is a dangerous job. It's construction. We want to take all the necessary measures to make sure people come home safe, right? They're not hurt. They're not overtired. They're not any of those things. They don't lose limbs or fingers. They're not doing that. So they have a sales manager that's very on top of this. Did I say safety manager? Safety manager. It's very on top of this to make sure people are doing best practices, right? And we want that culture to be conveyed to our customer too, because we know how important safety is to them too, right? It's paramount to our success. We have to be safe, or we can't be successful, because injuries cost you a ton of money, and it affects your reputation and everything else. So safety is paramount at our company, and we're going to continue to sell that. We need to sell that all the time. It's a great piece of our culture. I'm so excited to be at this job because I think that, I know how this company started out. I was there as a spectator. They were my customer, but I got to see how the company was growing. And they've continued on the path, right? They haven't changed. They have the same ideals. They have the same, they're educating their managers. They're doing all the things. They're doing best practices for business. And we're no doubt we're going to be successful and get to the goals we need to get to, right, that they've come up with. So anyway, I guess what I'll leave you with is that you are the most important people. When people say, oh, my kids are most important, they're not the most important thing in your household. They're wonderfully important. But if you and your wife, or you as a single parent, or an aunt or uncle or a grandparent, you have to be performing at a high level to make sure you can take care of them and teach them that same thing so they can take care of people later, right? You got to be selfish once in a while, not in a bad way, but in a way that you're going to be the best version of yourself. You're going to be around as long as possible. Look, shit's going to happen. I got news for you. That's just life. Stuff will happen. But you're in charge of 99% of what's going to happen in your life. And when you looked at those doors and you were able to kind of, just pick a year out of your life. Any year, you can pick the last year, the year before. Yes, COVID happened, but what did you do to change? I become much more educated technically. I'm sitting in a studio basically right now, instead of I'm sitting in an office in my house, but I have microphones and lighting, and I have all these things. In fact, you can see the light change when I move my hand. I've read more books. I've listened to more people. I've learned a lot of things in the last 2 years. And so something good came out of it, right? Has it been some other bad shit? Well, of course, everybody, I'm an extrovert. My God, it was killing me to sit in this fucking house all the time and not be able to go out and see people. But I'm back to going out and seeing people. And you know what? I can tell you, I really appreciate it now too. When I have the opportunity to go out, when I was at this mission the other day, I went around and met more people. I remember inviting my sales team to one of these missions one time. And when I was doing some things and I came back and all my sales guys were sitting at a table together talking. I said, you guys, this is a networking event. It doesn't do you any good. You already know each other. get out and talk to some other people. The next day, one of my salespeople came up and said, "Oh my God, I got like 4 or 5 leads at this place. This thing was awesome." I said, "No shit, I told you that." You got to get out. But then I couldn't convince him to go back again. He forgot. You know, we got to remember where those successes are. That's why those doors are so important to kind of go back and read what's happened in the past, right? Listen, I know I don't have enough listeners right now, and I probably know all of you, right? And I hope that there's some new people listening to my podcast, and it's going to get bigger. The website's coming out soon. And I just want to encourage you and give you some positive feedback about, there's so many great things in life. I've met so many young people in the last 6, 8 months, maybe a year. I'm talking 28 to 35 young people, 28 to 40 that are right in there, that are just starting their careers, that are kicking ass, that are really positive, smart kids. Then I've met some that are a little behind on the communication thing, and we need to help those kids come along. Teach them how to communicate, teach them how to look somebody in the face and talk to them. But we should all be there for each other to do that, right? I'm here, now as an educator. I always want to be that educator. I want you to look back in my life and go, I want to be able to say, I wouldn't do that because this is what I did and this is what happened. And the same thing's probably going to happen if you try it. And I want them to go, oh, yeah, good news. Thanks, man. I'll avoid that. Yeah, it's going to help your life a lot. I had people that told me shit and I didn't listen, and then I went and did the same stupid shit. And other people that told me some stuff and I listened and they were right. So we need to be out there helping each other. So the last thing I'll leave you with before I do my kind of outro is that you can't be selfish anymore. Now you got to go home and take care of your family and your dogs and your kids and all that, and your spouses and mates. But do me this favor, maybe 15 minutes a night, maybe when you're laying in bed before you go to sleep, or pull over for 15 minutes and be selfish for a few minutes and just kind of say to yourself, what can I do to make me a better provider, right? Whether you're providing love or food or housing or whatever you're providing. Let's just take a minute, and it's the most unselfish thing you can do is to be selfish like that on a regular basis, because all you're going to do is help the people that you're helping in a better way, right? And you're going to feel better about yourself. I think that the physical part of it, the health part of it, I think it's a big deal. So I know I kind of harp on that a lot, and I'm working on that too, right? Been back to the gym. My diet's not where I want it to be. I'm working on that. So anyway, I appreciate you listening today. I hope you share this. If you feel like it was something you can get out of it, please share. You can always contact me at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com. Share my podcast. Contact me if you want to be on the podcast, or somebody that would be a good guest. I'll help promote people's business, things like that. We'll talk about leadership and storytelling and all these things. We'll talk about all those things and make it a good podcast for their friends and family. But anyway, I appreciate you guys listening, and I will have another podcast that next week. Maybe have a guest next week. You never know. So thank you very much for listening. Please share. Ed Franklin.No Limits podcast. Have a great evening.